At my graduation party, I noticed my dad sneak powder into my champagne glass. I kept smiling, stood up, and handed it to my sister. She drank what was never meant for her. Imagine looking into your own father's eyes at your graduation party, only to realize he's calmly trying to poison you. My heart didn't just stop, it shattered into a million pieces the moment I saw him slip that white powder into my champagne glass. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about finding the strength to fight back when your own family becomes your greatest enemy. To understand why my parents, Joseph and Eleanor Harris, would do something so monstrous, you need to know about our family. The Harrisas were never a picture of warmth. My father, Joseph, built Harris Pharmaceuticals into a multi-billion-dollar empire. He was a ruthless force, the kind of man whose competitors mysteriously lost funding. But in public, he was the ultimate philanthropist, the family man. My mother, Eleanor, came from old money, obsessed with appearances and the untouchable Harris legacy. Our house was immaculate, a spread in architectural magazines, but behind those grand doors, she was cold, calculating, and every word she uttered about me was a critique. Then there was Sophia, my older sister, perfect in every way. Straight A's, debate team captain, Harvard Business School with honors. She slid right into the family company, the obvious heir. My parents never missed her tennis matches. Her trophies lined our shelves. When she spoke, they listened. My experience was different. I was a straight-A student too, but my achievements were always met with a shrug. That's what we expect from a Harris, my father would say, never even looking up from his newspaper. When I won the state science fair, my mother just commented on my messy hair in the photos. They only showed up to my events when not showing up would look bad. From childhood, my future was mapped out. Pharmaceutical sciences, join the company, run research while Sophia handled business. My protests were just background noise. When I found my passion in high school, environmental science, specifically how pharma waste affects ecosystems, my father scoffed, calling it tree hugger nonsense. Junior year, I applied to Northwestern for their environmental program. The fight that followed was explosive. My father threatened to cut me off. My mother cried about family duty, but I stood my ground. I argued that I could make a difference without walking their path. After weeks of chilling silence, they relented, but with conditions. They'd pay for my degree, but I had to minor in biochemistry and intern at their company every summer. College was partial freedom, but the tension escalated. Every holiday break was a barrage of passive-aggressive comments, waiting for me to come to my senses. Junior year, they ramped up the pressure, sending me job descriptions for their research department. When I secured an internship with an environmental nonprofit instead, they threatened to cut my tuition. I took out loans for my final year. I wouldn't give in. What they didn't know until recently was about Grandma Lillian. My maternal grandmother, Eleanor's mother, was the only family member who championed my independence. She was a brilliant chemist, but had been forced into her husband's shadow. Before she passed when I was 16, she made me promise to follow my own path. She'd left me a significant inheritance in a trust, accessible when I turned 23 or graduated, whichever came last. My parents discovered it 3 months before graduation. Their attorney mentioned it accidentally during a family meeting. Sophia later told me our father went white with rage. The trust was ironclad, $12 million, set up with independent trustees, giving me complete financial independence. Money that would have gone to them if I hadn't graduated or if I died before receiving it. The months leading up to graduation were eerily quiet. The constant texts and calls stopped. Instead, they took a sudden, intense interest in my graduation plans. My mother called, saying they wanted to throw me a proper Harris celebration. Their sudden change in behavior should have been my first warning. Graduation morning was bright and clear. I adjusted my cap in the mirror, a knot of pride and anxiety in my stomach. For years, I'd done it, charting my own course. My phone buzzed, car service 9:30. Don't be late. Outside the auditorium, my father checked emails and my mother scrutinized me. Couldn't you have done something more with your hair? She asked. No congratulations, just criticism. Sophia, though, gave me a small, supportive smile. Then, Taylor, my best friend, rushed over, her own gown fluttering, Zoe right behind her. My chosen family. We made it. Taylor hugged me tight, whispering, "Your parents still look like they smell something bad whenever they see you." "Some things never change," I whispered back. As my friends chatted, I saw my parents step aside, their conversation intense. My father's words drifted over. "We need to solve this problem today before it gets out of hand." My mother nodded grimly, then caught me watching. Her face snapped into a practiced social smile. "Darling, we should find our seats." The ceremony was a blur. Speeches, names, the satisfying weight of my diploma. When Daniel Elizabeth Harris, summa cum laude, echoed, Taylor and Zoe cheered wildly. My parents applauded politely, their faces unreadable. Afterward, a car whisked us to the Peninsula Chicago. They'd rented the entire rooftop terrace. Ice sculptures, champagne fountains, gourmet food, an orchestra. I was stunned. "Quite the production," Dr. Lewis said, approaching. He'd been my father's research partner, now a mentor. "Congratulations, Danielle." "Thanks," I said. "It's a bit much, isn't it?" "Not really their style for me." I scanned the crowd. "And the guest list?" "Half these people I barely know." Dr. Lewis pointed to my father talking with men in expensive suits. "Business associates," he explained. "And over there with your mother, that's Gerald Thorne, your family's attorney." He lowered his voice. "Things have been tense at the company. Rumors of irregularities in clinical trials. Your father's been in closed-door meetings for weeks." My stomach tightened. "What kind of irregularities?" He shook his head. "Nothing concrete. But be careful, Danielle. Your parents seem particularly invested in keeping the Harris legacy intact right now." As the party filled, I noticed something chilling. My parents were watching me. Not with pride, not even disappointment, but a calculating intensity. Whenever I moved, one of them would subtly reposition to keep me in their line of sight. Sophia sidled up. "Something weird is going on," she murmured. "Dad asked me 3 times if you'd mentioned your post-graduation plans. And Mom keeps checking her watch like she's waiting for something." Before I could respond, my father clinked his glass. "In 15 minutes, we'll have a special champagne toast to the graduate," he announced, his businessman's smile fixed. "Everyone, make sure you have a glass." I watched as waiters prepped flutes. My father beckoned the head waiter, pointing to a specific, gold-labeled bottle. "That one," he said, "for the family only." With 15 minutes until the toast, I excused myself, heading for the restroom. The main one had a line, so I slipped down a service corridor to an employee restroom I'd noticed. As I got closer, angry whispers stopped me dead. "Are you absolutely certain this is necessary?" My mother's voice, tense, higher than normal. "Do you want to lose everything we've built?" My father hissed back. "The FDA investigation is gaining momentum. If they find those test results, we're finished. The trust gives her enough money to be completely independent. What if she decides to play environmental crusader and exposes the river contamination from the West facility? She's always been self-righteous enough to do it. But drugging her at her own graduation party, Joseph. We could just talk to her again." "Talk? Like that's ever worked?" "She's stubborn and naive. It's just enough to make her sick, not to kill her. She'll be hospitalized for a few days with what looks like food poisoning. That gives us time to handle paperwork, move assets, before the trust disbursement. The lawyers confirmed if she dies before the official transfer next week, it reverts to us as her next of kin." "Keep your voice down," my mother whispered harshly. Someone could hear us. My blood turned to ice. They were planning to poison me. My own parents. The realization was so monstrous, my mind initially rejected it. But the biochemist in me processed my father's words clinically, just enough to make her sick, non-lethal dose, present as food poisoning. Serious enough for hospitalization. I slipped back down the corridor, my hands shaking so badly I could barely check my makeup in the main bathroom. I needed to appear normal, to think clearly. Years of navigating their manipulation had taught me to compartmentalize, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. Back at the party, I watched with new eyes. Waiters arranged flutes. My father approached, carefully selecting a glass and placing it slightly apart. The gold-labeled bottle was opened. The bartender began filling glasses. My father hovered, ensuring he knew exactly which was which. I made my way to Taylor and Zoe, my voice steady through sheer will. "I need you to do something for me." No questions asked. Taylor, always loyal, nodded instantly. "Record the toast on your phone." Get my father in the frame as much as possible, especially when he hands out the champagne. Is everything okay? Zoe asked, concerned. Just a precaution, I forced a smile. Family drama as usual. The minutes crawled by. My biochemistry training kicked in. What would he use? Something hard to detect, something that mimicked food poisoning, perhaps from their own research facilities, not on standard toxicology screens. I'd need to recognize symptoms quickly: nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, dizziness, respiratory issues. If I could identify it, I could tell medical personnel what to test for. As my father called everyone together, I realized I needed evidence. If I just refused the champagne, they'd try again. I needed concrete proof. The toast approached with a surreal quality. Waiters distributed champagne to guests. My father personally handled the glasses from this special bottle. The family should have the finest champagne for this special occasion, he announced jovially. He handed glasses to my mother, then Sophia. Then he extended one specifically to me, his eyes meeting mine with a smile that never reached them. I watched in slow motion as he presented the glass. I saw it. A slightly cloudy quality at the bottom, a powder not fully dissolved. His large signet ring glinted as he held the stem, practically forcing the glass into my hand. To Danielle, he said loudly, raising his own glass. May your future be everything you deserve. The double meaning hit me hard. I accepted the poisoned champagne, careful not to let it touch my lips. Before we drank, my mother interjected, Joseph, why don't you say a few words about our daughter? My father cleared his throat, slipping into his public persona. Danielle has always been determined, he began, words carefully chosen to sound complimentary, but laced with years of disapproval. While she has chosen an unconventional path, today we celebrate her academic achievement. As he continued his passive-aggressive speech, my mind raced. Taylor was recording, phone discreetly raised. I had to act. The champagne in my hand might as well have been a live grenade. And to Sophia, my father added, surprising everyone, deviating from the usual toast. Who has shown what a true Harris can accomplish in the business world. The perfect example of family loyalty. Sophia smiled uncomfortably, clearly caught off guard. And in that instant, I made my decision. Speaking of my amazing sister, I said, stepping forward with a bright smile. I wouldn't be here without her support. She deserves a proper toast, too. I held out my flute to her. This special reserve champagne father selected is too good not to share. Take mine, sis, I insist. Before anyone could react, I'd pressed my untouched glass into Sophia's hand and smoothly taken her already partially drunk glass. My father's face froze in a mask of horror he couldn't publicly display. My mother's knuckles went white around her own glass. To family, I declared, raising Sophia's safe champagne, looking directly into my father's eyes. Confusion flickered across Sophia's face, but her social training kicked in. She smiled, raised my champagne glass. To family, she echoed, and drank deeply from the poisoned glass. I sipped from her original glass, never breaking eye contact with my father. His face went ashen, a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead as he realized. My mother glanced rapidly between Sophia and him, her practiced smile brittle. The moment passed. Guests applauded. Conversations resumed. The orchestra played on. I circulated, making small talk, keeping Sophia in my peripheral vision. Guilt and fear raged inside me. I hadn't had time for another solution. I'd just allowed my sister to drink poison meant for me. It was supposed to be non-lethal, according to what I'd overheard. But what if he'd lied to my mother? What if Sophia reacted badly? 34 minutes after the toast, it happened. I was speaking with a professor when I heard a gasp. Sophia, talking to a junior associate, suddenly pressed her hand to her forehead, swaying. I feel strange, I heard her slur. Really dizzy suddenly. I pushed through the crowd just as her knees buckled. The associate caught her awkwardly. Help! Something is wrong. My parents rushed over, genuine panic in their eyes. Their golden child. My father reached her first, cradling her head as she began to mumble incoherently. Her skin had a grayish tinge, sweat beaded on her forehead. Call an ambulance, my mother shrieked, all composure gone. Dr. Lewis appeared, checking Sophia's pulse. Her heart rate is elevated and irregular, he reported, loosening her collar. What was she doing before this? She just had champagne at the toast, the associate answered. She seemed fine. My father's eyes snapped to mine. Realization, fury, and fear mixed. I stared back, unflinching. Ambulance is on its way, someone announced. 5 minutes out. I knelt beside Sophia, taking her hand. Stay with her, I told my parents firmly. I'll go downstairs to direct the paramedics. They nodded distractedly, all attention on Sophia, who had begun to tremble. In the elevator, I pulled out my phone. Taylor, I instructed. Meet me in the lobby right now. Bring your phone with the recording. It's an emergency. Taylor and Zoe were waiting when the doors opened. Sophia collapsed, I explained rapidly, walking toward the entrance. I need you to give a copy of that toast recording to the paramedics and tell them I suspect poisoning. Then send me a backup. Poisoning? Zoe repeated, horrified. What the hell is going on, Danielle? I'll explain everything later. Please, just trust me. The sirens were growing closer. When the paramedics arrived, I approached the first one. My sister has collapsed upstairs. Symptoms include dizziness, disorientation, irregular heartbeat, and tremors. I have reason to believe she ingested a toxic substance in her champagne. The paramedic looked at me sharply. You suspect poisoning based on what? I'm a biochemistry graduate. The symptoms presented suddenly, about 30 minutes after consumption. Before I could finish, my parents burst from the elevator with Dr. Lewis, supporting a semi-conscious Sophia. The paramedics rushed forward, their training taking over. Please help her, my mother sobbed, mascara running. She just collapsed. BP 90/60 and dropping, one paramedic reported. Pulse 120 and irregular. As they loaded her into the ambulance, my father turned to me, his voice low and dangerous. What did you do? Nothing, I replied calmly. She drank from my glass. Remember the special champagne you selected just for me? His face contorted with rage and fear. You switched the glasses deliberately. You knew. Knew what, father? That you put something in my drink? Why would I think that? I held his gaze steadily. Unless you did. She needs family with her, a paramedic interrupted. One person can ride along. I'll go, my mother insisted, climbing in. We'll follow in the car, my father said, grabbing my arm painfully. All of us. The ride to Northwestern Memorial Hospital was a tense silence. My father drove. I sat in the back seat, Taylor and Zoe promising to meet me there. My phone buzzed. A text from Taylor, video sent to your email showing you clearly switching glasses after your father handed you one. What do I tell the police when they arrive? Police. Of course there would be police. I texted back quickly, tell them everything you saw. Show them the video. In the emergency room, chaos reigned. Sophia was rushed into a treatment area. My mother wailed dramatically. I went directly to the nurse's station. I need to speak with my sister's doctor immediately. I have reason to believe she ingested a toxin, and I may know what it is. The nurse looked skeptical until I added, I'm a biochemistry graduate specializing in pharmaceutical compounds. Time might be critical. Minutes later, I was speaking with Dr. Patel, Sophia's emergency physician. Your sister is experiencing symptoms consistent with anticholinergic poisoning, she explained. Elevated heart rate, confusion, dilated pupils, dry mouth. We're treating her symptoms while running toxicology screens. You need to specifically test for cyclopentylate derivatives, I said. My father works with modified versions at Harris Pharmaceuticals. They're testing a new class of compounds that wouldn't show up on standard tox screens. Dr. Patel's eyebrows rose. That's a very specific suggestion. Why do you suspect this compound? I took a deep breath. Because I believe my father intentionally added it to my champagne glass. But my sister drank from it instead. Her professional demeanor didn't change, but she reached for the phone. I need to contact the police. Within an hour, the emergency room was a crime scene. 2 detectives interviewed staff. An officer stood guard outside Sophia's room. My parents were separated for questioning, my mother loudly protesting, my father demanding his attorney. I sat in a small consultation room with Detective Rivera, a serious woman with kind eyes. Walk me through what happened again, she requested, taking notes. I recounted everything, the overheard conversation, seeing my father place the powder, the split-second decision to switch glasses. I have biochemistry training. I recognized the symptoms when they started. I never thought he'd use something potentially lethal, but I couldn't be sure. And why would your parents want to poison you? She asked carefully. Money, I replied simply. Control. My grandmother left me a trust worth about $12 million that activates next week. If I died before then, it reverts to them. They also recently discovered their company is under FDA investigation, and they believe I might have information that could harm them. Detective Rivera's expression didn't change, but she wrote something and underlined it. That is a serious accusation. I know, I said quietly. I have the video my friend took of the toast. You can clearly see my father giving me a specific glass and my decision to switch with Sophia. You can also interview Dr. Lewis, who is aware of tensions within the family and the company. A knock at the door. Dr. Patel entered. We have preliminary toxicology results, she announced. Elevated levels of a modified anticholinergic compound, similar to but not identical to cyclopentolate. It appears to be a research compound not yet in commercial production. Detective Rivera looked between us. In English, please. It's a lab-created drug that would cause symptoms mimicking severe food poisoning, but with additional cardiovascular effects, I explained. Exactly the kind of compound Harris Pharmaceuticals has been developing. Only someone with access to their research facilities would have it. Will she be all right? I asked Dr. Patel anxiously. We're administering visostigmine as an antidote, she replied. Her condition is serious, but stable. If we hadn't identified the compound quickly, there could have been permanent heart damage. I closed my eyes briefly, relief washing over me. Thank you. When I opened them, Detective Rivera was studying me. You realize that by your own admission, you knowingly allowed your sister to drink what you suspected was poisoned champagne. My stomach dropped. I didn't know what else to do in that moment. I needed evidence. I thought it was just enough to make someone sick, not life-threatening. My voice shook. I made a terrible decision, and I will have to live with that. Before she could respond, the door burst open. My father stormed in, followed by a flustered officer and a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit. This is outrageous, my father shouted. My daughter is clearly mentally unstable and jealous of her sister's success. She has been making wild accusations about our family for years. Mr. Harris, I must ask you to step outside, Detective Rivera said firmly. Joseph Harris, do not say another word, the suited man instructed, placing a hand on my father's arm. I am Gerald Thorne, the Harris family attorney. My client has no comment at this time. Your client is not under arrest yet, Detective Rivera emphasized, but I suggest he cooperate fully. We have video evidence of the champagne toast and preliminary toxicology reports confirming a research-grade pharmaceutical compound in Sophia Harris's system. My father's face went through a rapid series of emotions before settling into cold fury. Danielle has always been troubled, he said, his voice suddenly calm and reasonable. She was jealous of her sister, resentful of our expectations. She has threatened before to destroy our family business out of spite. That is not true. I protested. We indulged her environmental science whims despite her responsibilities to the family company, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. We even threw this expensive graduation party to show our support. And how does she repay us? By creating this elaborate drama and allowing her own sister to become ill. Gerald Thorne placed a business card on the table. Detective, we will cooperate fully, but any further questions should come through me. The Harris family is prominent, and we expect discretion. After they left, Detective Rivera picked up the card with 2 fingers. Interesting family you have, Miss Harris. You have no idea, I replied wearily. A commotion in the hallway. Dr. Lewis arrived, arguing with the officer. I am her family physician, he insisted. I need to review her treatment. Detective Rivera and I stepped out. Dr. Lewis spotted me. Danielle, thank God. What happened? They're saying Joseph tried to poison you. Before I could answer, Dr. Patel emerged. She is asking for you, Danielle. She's still groggy but lucid. Entering the dimly lit hospital room, I felt a wave of guilt seeing Sophia connected to monitors. Her normally perfect appearance was disheveled, her skin still pale. Her eyes fluttered open as I approached. Hey, I said softly, taking her hand. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, she replied, her voice raspy. They told me, is it true? Did Dad really try to poison you? I nodded slowly, tears filling my eyes. I'm so sorry you drank it instead. I just reacted. I didn't think. Why? She whispered, confusion and pain clouding her eyes. Why would he do that? The trust from Grandma Lillian. The FDA investigation. They were afraid I'd expose contamination at the West facility. Understanding dawned in Sophia's eyes. The sealed reports, the ones they've been keeping on the secure server. She squeezed my hand weakly. I saw them last month, but didn't understand what I was looking at. Heavy metal readings, disposal records. They've been dumping research waste directly into the watershed for years. A soft knock interrupted us. Detective Rivera entered with another plainclothes officer. Miss Harris, we've just received some additional information. The FBI has been investigating Harris Pharmaceuticals for the past 6 months for fraud, environmental violations, and falsification of clinical trial data. I stared at her. The FBI? Yes. Your parents were already under surveillance. When we contacted them about the poisoning, they shared that they have substantial evidence of criminal activity. They've just executed search warrants at your family's offices and home. Sophia's monitors beeped. Her heart rate increased. Oh my God, she whispered. I signed off on some of those documents. Joseph said they were routine regulatory filings. We will need to speak with you about that later, Miss Harris, the officer said to Sophia. For now, focus on your recovery. As they left, Sophia began to cry quietly. I trusted them completely. I defended them whenever you complained about how they treated you. And all this time, I held her hand tightly. You didn't know. They manipulated both of us, just in different ways. What happens now? She asked, fear and uncertainty replacing her usual confidence. Now we tell the truth, I replied simply. All of it. The story broke in the Chicago Tribune 2 days later. Pharmaceutical CEO and wife arrested for attempted murder of daughter. Smaller headlines added, FBI uncovers massive fraud and environmental crimes at Harris Pharmaceuticals. Our family name, once synonymous with success, became shorthand for corporate greed and familial betrayal. I moved temporarily into Taylor and Zoe's apartment, unable to face my own place where reporters lurked. Sophia remained in the hospital for 4 more days, then was released into the care of our Aunt Patricia, my mother's estranged sister who flew in from Seattle. I always knew Eleanor was capable of terrible things, Aunt Patricia told me over coffee. But I never imagined this. I should have stayed in touch with you girls. The investigation expanded rapidly. The FBI discovered a trove of incriminating documents, emails detailing systematic falsification of safety data for 3 major drugs, environmental testing showing years of illegal toxic waste disposal contaminating groundwater. Detective Rivera kept me updated. The lab confirmed the compound was an experimental anticholinergic from your father's private research facility, she explained. He had signed it out personally 3 days before your graduation. We also found notes in his home office detailing dosage calculations. I worked with the authorities, providing everything I knew. Days blurred into police interviews, meetings with prosecutors, checking on Sophia. A week after the incident, Special Agent Donovan from the FBI requested a meeting. He spread photographs across the table. Do you recognize this location? Images of a storage unit, boxes of documents, laptops, and, most disturbingly, vials of various compounds in temperature-controlled containers. No, I replied. I've never seen this place. It's a storage unit rented under your name, he said, watching my reaction. Opened 6 months ago with what appears to be a forged signature. My blood ran cold. They were planning this for months, setting me up in case their original plan failed. It appears so, Agent Donovan agreed. We found evidence on your father's computer of multiple contingency plans. The poisoning attempt was Plan C, Plans A and B involved more elaborate setups that would have implicated you in corporate espionage and data theft. As the case built, more family secrets emerged. Financial records revealed years of siphoning company funds into offshore accounts. Former employees came forward, fired for raising safety concerns. 3 families filed lawsuits, claiming loved ones died from side effects Harris Pharmaceuticals deliberately concealed. Through it all, Sophia and I grew closer than we ever had. The golden child facade crumbled as she processed her own sense of betrayal. I was their puppet, she admitted during one of our long talks. Everything I did was to please them. My whole identity was built around being the perfect Harris daughter. You were also their shield, I pointed out gently. As long as you were the successful, obedient one, they could dismiss me as the problematic child, rather than questioning their own behavior. 2 weeks after the incident, Our parents were held without bail, deemed flight risks due to their substantial overseas assets. Their preliminary hearing was set for the following week. Sophia and I met for breakfast at a quiet cafe. She still moved carefully, not fully recovered. "Are you ready for this?" I asked, stirring my untouched coffee. "No," she admitted. "But we need to be there. I need to look them in the eyes." The courthouse steps were swarmed with reporters. Inside, the hearing room fell silent as we entered. Our parents sat at the defense table, impeccably dressed. My mother's eyes filled with tears when she saw Sophia, but my father stared straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge either of us. The evidence was damning. The prosecution displayed Taylor's video, showing my father giving me the specific glass, my switch with Sophia. Toxicology reports confirmed the compound. Financial records laid bare the motive, my trust fund. Most shocking was a recorded phone call my father made from detention, asking an associate to clean up those river samples and mentioning that Danielle was always the problem child, never understanding family loyalty. When the judge ruled there was sufficient evidence for trial on all counts, including attempted murder, my mother collapsed in theatrical sobs. My father remained stone-faced, only his clenched jaw betraying his fury. Outside, reporters swarmed again. Sophia surprised me by taking my hand and addressing them directly. "My sister and I are cooperating fully with authorities. We ask for privacy during this difficult time as we come to terms with our parents' betrayal." As we pushed through, a reporter called out, "Did you know your sister was switching the glasses? Were you part of the plan?" Sophia stopped cold, turning back with unexpected fire. "My sister saved my life. Our parents tried to poison her. And when she realized it, she had seconds to decide what to do. She has carried unnecessary guilt for my suffering, but the only people responsible are Joseph and Eleanor Harris. They were willing to kill their own daughter for money and to cover up their crimes. That is the story you should be telling." In the following days, more family members reached out, cousins, distant aunts, even my father's brother, ostracized decades ago for whistleblowing on an earlier scandal. Our family tree, it seemed, was filled with stories of control and retribution. Sophia and I began the painful process of legally and financially separating ourselves. We hired our own attorney, Vivian Santos, a kind but razor-sharp woman. "Your grandmother's trust is secure," she assured me. "The trustees have accelerated the transfer given the extraordinary circumstances. As for Harris Pharmaceuticals, that's more complicated. I don't want anything to do with it," I stated firmly. Sophia nodded. "Neither do I, but we have a responsibility to the employees who weren't involved and to the communities affected. There's also your parents' personal assets," Vivian continued. "Much will be seized for restitution, but substantial holdings would typically pass to you." I looked at Sophia, my own conflict reflected in her eyes. "We need time to think about that," I said. As summer progressed, the case against our parents strengthened. 3 former Harris Pharmaceuticals executives agreed to testify. Environmental testing confirmed widespread contamination. Estimated cleanup costs exceeded $100 million. In August, 2 months after the party, Sophia and I returned to our childhood home with FBI agents. Walking through those silent, imposing rooms felt surreal. Perfect, cold, sterile. In my father's study, agents cataloged contents of his safe. "Miss Harris," one called, holding out a small leather journal. "Do you recognize this?" I took it. It was old, pages yellowed. Inside, Grandma Lillian's handwriting. A record of her own discoveries, her concerns about Harris Pharmaceuticals from decades earlier. The final entry, dated shortly before her death, read, "I have arranged for Danielle's financial independence. She alone has the conscience and strength to break the cycle of this family's poison." Tears filled my eyes as I showed it to Sophia. "She knew," I whispered. "She was trying to protect me all along." "And you protected me," Sophia replied, squeezing my hand. "That's what real family does." 6 months after that fateful graduation party, I stood on the porch of my grandmother's lake house, watching the November sun shimmer across the water. The property, part of my inheritance, a peaceful retreat, was now my home. The trust had been officially transferred 3 weeks after the incident. The first thing I did was establish a separate fund for Sophia's ongoing medical care and therapy. Though she'd physically recovered, the psychological wounds ran deep. Hot chocolate delivery, a voice called. Sophia emerged from the house, 2 steaming mugs, bundled in one of my oversized sweaters. She'd moved in with me a month ago, selling her downtown condo, too full of memories. Perfect timing, I smiled, accepting the mug. I was just thinking how much has changed. Everything, she agreed, settling into the Adirondack chair. Remember coming here with Grandma Lillian? She'd let us stay up late, watching the stars, telling us stories about women scientists who changed the world. I remember Mother hating those trips, I laughed softly. She was convinced Grandma was filling our heads with dangerous independence. She was right about that, at least. Sophia's smile turned contemplative. The prosecutors called this morning. They're offering a plea deal. My hands tightened around the warm mug. What kind of deal? 20 years for father on the attempted murder charge plus environmental crimes. For Mother, less if she testifies about the corporate fraud. She paused. They want to know if we object. I stared out at the lake, watching an eagle circle. Do you? I don't know, she admitted. Part of me wants them to face a full trial, to have everything exposed. But another part just wants it to be over. I understand. We sat in comfortable silence, a new dynamic for sisters who'd spent most of their lives as strangers. The past months had forged a genuine bond, built on shared trauma, but expanding into real friendship and trust. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Lewis. Environmental job interview went well. Impressed by your research proposal on pharmaceutical waste remediation. Call me for details. I smiled, showing the message to Sophia. After the dust settled, I'd started reaching out to environmental science firms. My biochemistry background, combined with my environmental focus, made me uniquely qualified to work on pharmaceutical pollution. It felt right, using the Harris knowledge to heal some of the damage my family had caused. Sophia had her own healing journey. She resigned from Harris Pharmaceuticals immediately, spending months helping authorities understand the company's operations. Now, she was considering law school, inspired by the victim advocates she'd met. The house is being seized next week, she mentioned, referring to our childhood home. They wanted to know if there's anything personal we want to retrieve. I shook my head. Nothing I need there. What about you? I already took the photo albums, she said. The real ones, not the staged family portraits Mother kept. The candid ones Nora used to take. Nora, our housekeeper for 15 years, the closest thing to a loving maternal figure we had. Have you heard from Nora? I asked. She's in Florida with her daughter. She sent me a care package last week with homemade cookies and a note saying she always knew we'd break free eventually. The criminal proceedings continued. Our parents maintained their innocence publicly, their attorneys negotiating frantically. The evidence was overwhelming. We discovered through corporate emails that my parents had known about the environmental contamination for over a decade. Communities downstream from the factory experienced elevated cancer rates and birth defects, information my parents had systematically suppressed through confidential settlements and manipulated studies. I channeled my anger into action, establishing a foundation with part of my inheritance, dedicated to providing healthcare and environmental testing for affected communities. It couldn't undo the damage, but it was a start toward making amends for the Harris legacy. The media gradually lost interest, allowing us precious anonymity. I began volunteering with a water quality monitoring program at the lake, finding healing in the simple act of protecting something beautiful. On a cold January morning, exactly 7 months after the graduation party, Sophia and I sat in the courtroom as our parents accepted their plea deals. They looked smaller, designer clothes replaced by muted business attire, their imperious demeanor diminished by months in detention. My mother wept quietly as the judge detailed her crimes. My father remained stoic, his eyes fixed on some middle distance. Neither of them looked at us, their daughters, sitting in the gallery. When asked for statements before sentencing, my mother declined. My father stood. For a brief moment, I thought he might express remorse. Instead, he spoke about his lifetime of contributions to medical science, how he'd always done what was necessary to protect the family business. He described himself as a victim of changing regulatory standards and expressed hope that history would judge him more fairly. Not once did he acknowledge the communities his company had poisoned, the patients harmed by falsified drug safety data, or his attempt to murder his own daughter. In his mind, he remained justified. a man who had merely done what was necessary. As the bailiff led them away to begin their sentences, I felt a complex wave of emotions, sadness for what our family could have been, anger at their continued refusal to take responsibility, but predominantly, an overwhelming sense of relief. It was finally over. Outside, Dr. Lewis waited with Taylor and Zoe, my chosen family, who had supported me unfailingly. "How are you feeling?" Taylor asked, hugging me tight. "Free," I replied simply. "Like I can finally breathe." In the months that followed, Sophia and I continued our separate but intertwined healing journeys. We sold most of our parents' personal assets, directing proceeds toward a victim compensation fund. I accepted the position with the environmental remediation firm, focusing specifically on the cleanup of the Harris West facility. Sophia began her first semester of law school, determined to specialize in environmental law and corporate accountability. We kept the lake house as our shared refuge, a place that held happy memories untainted by our parents' influence. Sometimes we'd sit on the dock, talking late into the night, processing our complicated grief for the family we had lost and the one we had never really had. "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" Sophia asked me one evening as we watched the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson. I considered the question carefully. I don't know if forgiveness is the right word. I've accepted what happened and who they are. I've released the anger because carrying it was only hurting me. But forgiveness feels like it requires repentance from them, and I don't think they're capable of that. She nodded thoughtfully. I keep thinking about nature versus nurture. Were they born this way, or did something make them like this? And either way, what does that mean for us? It means we have choices, I said firmly. Their blood runs in our veins, but their values don't have to run in our hearts. We get to decide what kind of people we become. A year after the graduation party, I stood at a podium, addressing a conference on pharmaceutical environmental impact. As I discussed innovative approaches to remediation, I caught sight of Sophia in the audience, proudly recording my speech on her phone. Beside her sat Dr. Lewis, Taylor, Zoe, and a growing circle of friends and colleagues who had become our support system. The journey had been painful beyond imagination. But standing there, I realized I had found something I had never experienced in the Harris household: genuine belonging. Not based on compliance or achievement or genetic connection, but on mutual respect, shared values, and authentic care. My parents had seen me as a problem to solve, a threat to eliminate. They had tried to poison not just my body, but my spirit, my independence, my very sense of self. In choosing to fight back and refusing to become either victim or villain in their narrative, I had discovered my own strength and purpose. The inheritance my grandmother left me was valuable, but her true gift had been believing in my capacity to break the toxic cycle. That faith had saved my life, and now it was shaping my future. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect yourself from toxic family relationships? What helped you find the strength to move forward? I hope my story reminds you that blood relation does not entitle anyone to harm you, and that sometimes the most loving families are the ones we create for ourselves. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of survival and renewal. And remember, the most powerful antidote to poison is truth. Thank you for listening to my journey.